right now, somewhere in your home, there's an animal that doesn't need you. It doesn't come when you call. It ignores you for hours. It knocks things off tables and stares at you. While it died, it has never once in its life thought about your feelings. And yet, over 600 million of them live alongside humans on this planet. They sleep in our beds. They appear in more internet videos than any other creature alive. People spend billions of dollars every year feeding, grooming, and buying tiny furniture for them. The cat has conquered the modern world. But here's the thing, nobody tells you we didn't choose cats. Cats chose us. And the strangest part, neither side fully understood what was happening when it started. To understand how this happened, you need to go back about 10,000 years to the Fertile Crescent, the region we now call the Middle East. This is where something enormous was changing in human history. For the first 290,000 years of our existence, humans moved constantly. We followed animals, followed seasons, followed food. We didn't stay anywhere long enough to accumulate much. And then, around 10,000 BCE, something shifted. Humans stopped moving. We started planting crops. We figured out that if you put seeds in the ground and came back later, food would grow there. And when you have a reliable food source, you stop following it. You stay. For the first time in human history, people built permanent settlements. And those settlements came with something new. Grain stores. Enormous piles of wheat and barley stored in clay pots and underground chambers. And that grain attracted something. Rodents, mice, rats, and small animals flooded into these early villages, drawn by the most reliable food source they had ever encountered in their lives. And mice attracted something else entirely. The wild cat, specifically Felis silvestris libica, the African wildcat, a small, striped, intensive territorial hunter, native to the Middle East and North Africa. These animals were not friendly. They were not social. They had no interest in humans whatsoever. In the wild, they were solitary, aggressive, and deeply suspicious of anything larger than themselves. But they were also the most effective mouse-killing machines that had ever evolved on Earth. And suddenly, the world's greatest concentration of mice was sitting inside a human village. The first wildcats to approach human settlements were not the boldest or the strongest. They were the least fearful, the ones that tolerated being near humans without fleeing immediately. And those cats, the slightly calmer ones, the ones who could stand being near people, had access to something extraordinary. An unlimited food supply, more mice than they could ever eat. The aggressive wildcats stayed in the wild and competed for scarce prey. The calmer ones crept closer to human settlements and ate endlessly. Over generations, evolution did what it always does. It rewarded what worked. Calmer cats had more food. More food meant more kittens. More kittens inherited the calmer temperament. And slowly, quietly, over hundreds of years, the wildcats that lived near humans started changing. Not because humans bred them, not because humans trained them. They changed themselves. In biological terms, this is called self-domestication, the same phenomena that may have started the dog story. But cats took it in a completely different direction. In 2017, a team of geneticists published the most complete study ever done on cat domestication. They analyzed ancient cat DNA from archaeological sites across Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, some samples going back 9,000 years. What they found was remarkable. All domestic cats on Earth, every single one, descend from one subspecies, Felis silvestris libic, the Middle Eastern wildcat. Not the European wildcat, not the African lion, not any other species. One specific population of small wildcats from the Fertile Crescent who started hanging around human grain stores thousands of years ago. And here's what makes cats genetically unique compared to dogs, cows, horses, and every other domesticated animal. Cats are barely domesticated at all. When scientists compare the genomes of domestic cats to their wild ancestors, the genetic differences are tiny, almost vanishingly small. Cats are essentially wild animals that decided to tolerate humans in exchange for food. The genes that did change over time were mostly related to two things: fear responses and reward processing. Domestic cats are less frightened of humans than their wild ancestors, and they've developed a slightly stronger ability to associate human presence with positive experiences, food, warmth, safety. That's it. That's the entire domestication. Dogs, by comparison, underwent enormous genetic transformations over thousands of years of intentional human breeding. Dogs have hundreds of genes different from wolves. They evolve facial muscles specifically to make expressions humans find appealing. Dogs are genuinely wired to seek human approval. Cats evolved to tolerate us. There's a difference, and cats have one more trick that no other domesticated animal has, something they invented specifically to manipulate you. Adult cats almost never meow at each other. This surprises most people. But wildcats and feral cats living without human contact use meowing almost exclusively as kittens to call their mother when they're hungry or lost. Adult wildcats communicate through scent, body language, and occasional yowling during mating or fights. But meowing, that's a baby sound. Except domestic cats never stopped doing it. Researchers studying cat communication discovered that domestic cats have essentially extended their kittenhood behavior into adulthood, but only when interacting with humans. With other cats, they communicate normally. With us, they meow. Why? Because it works. Humans are biologically wired to respond to high-pitched sounds that resemble infant cries. Your brain cannot easily ignore that kind of sound. It activates the same neural circuits as a crying baby: urgency, attention, the instinct to help. Cats figured this out, not consciously, not through planning, but the cats who happened to vocalize in ways that got human attention, that triggered feeding behavior, were more successful than the ones who didn't. Over generations, that behavior got locked in. Your cat's meow is not communication between equals. It's a 10,000-year-old manipulation technique that your nervous system has no defense against. And it gets stranger. Researchers have identified what they call the solicitation purr, a specific purring pattern that cats use only when they want something from a human. Embedded inside a regular purr is a high-frequency cry, at roughly the same frequency as a human infant. You can't consciously hear it as a cry, but your brain responds to it anyway. Cats have independently evolved to hijack your parental instincts, and they did it by accident. By the time ancient Egypt rose to power around 4,000 years ago, cats had completed their quiet conquest of human civilization. The Egyptians didn't just tolerate cats, they worshipped them. The goddess Bastet was depicted as a cat, or a woman with a cat's head. She represented protection, fertility, and the home. Killing a cat in ancient Egypt, even accidentally, was punishable by death. When a family cat died, the household would go into formal mourning. Family members shaved their eyebrows as a sign of grief. Archaeologists have found mummified cats buried in tombs alongside their owners. Some were given their own sarcophagi. Some were provided with mummified mice as food for the afterlife. Think about what that means. An animal that started out as a pest control solution in a grain warehouse had, within a few thousand years, become a deity. The cat hadn't changed much. Humans had changed everything around it. And from Egypt, cats spread outward across the ancient world, carried on trading ships, spreading across the Mediterranean, into Europe, into Asia, and eventually to every continent where humans lived. They went everywhere humans went, not because humans forced them, because cats had made themselves useful enough and charming enough that wherever humans sailed, they brought cats along. Today, the cat's position in human life has become something that would have made zero sense to a prehistoric farmer. We no longer need cats to control mice. We have traps, poison, sealed food containers, concrete buildings. The original reason cats entered our lives has been almost completely eliminated. And yet there are now more pet cats on Earth than at any point in human history. Neuroscience researchers studying human-cat interaction found something interesting. When humans interact with cats, their bodies release oxytocin, the same bonding hormone released between parents and infants, between close friends, between people in love. The same hormone dogs trigger, the same one that kept your prehistoric ancestors up, caring for helpless children for years. The cat. An animal that is by all biological measures barely tame, triggers the deepest bonding chemistry your brain produces. And in an era when millions of people live alone, when loneliness is rising, when the texture of daily human connection has changed completely, an animal that sits near you, purrs, and occasionally tolerates being held, has become one of the most important sources of emotional comfort on the planet. The wildcat crept toward a grain pile 10,000 years ago looking for mice. What it found slowly and completely by accident was the loneliest species on Earth. So here's the full picture. 10,000 years ago, a small, wild animal made a calculated survival decision. Not consciously, but the cats that stayed near humans ate better, lived longer, and had more kittens. They changed just enough to be tolerated. They invented vocalizations that exploit human psychology. They spread across the ancient world riding on our ships. They became gods in one of history's greatest civilizations. And they did all of this without being trained, without being selectively bred, without being asked. We think we domesticated cats. The evidence says something different. Cats surveyed the situation, decided humans were useful, and moved in. The grain is long gone. The mice are mostly gone. But here you are, 10,000 years later, buying them special food and filming them for the internet. The cat hasn't changed its strategy since the beginning. You just never noticed it was a strategy at all.